Om Asatu Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya Avirāvirmane Yutro Yaste Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam Te Namam Pahi Nityam Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Lord, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness to light. Lead us from death to immortality. And evermore shine in our hearts with your resplendent face. From peace, peace, peace be unto us. We are very happy to have the second day with Swami Atmarupananda. He is the head of our France Center, and it is thriving there with so much of activities, and the center is becoming more popular among the people of the land, and hundreds of people from neighboring countries come to attend to the retreat and other things. So it's a wonderful what Swami is doing. And Swami was mostly here before, but he has been in our Trubuco, in our San Diego, and then to Houston, and all this, and India also. He has did the commendable work on the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. Please So anyway, so we are very happy that he will be with us today, and his topic today is that the work before us. The work before us. Prolific writer and a speaker, the interfaith, his expertise in interfaith activities. How many conferences he has made, the top people of the all religious, even in meet or something.
I only saw him, but the Dalai Lama 3 times and some other people like that. Don't really need it, no. No, thank you.
Okay, so we request Swami to start. The subject is for the work before us, and he will be leaving tomorrow, so we'll tell it at the end.
Thank you, Maharaji. Om yo brahmanam vidadhati purvam yo vai vedangscha prahinoti tasmai tam hadevam atma buddhi prakasham mumukshur vai sharanamaham prapadye. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. We who seek liberation take refuge in that infinite light which illuminates the hearts of all, which is the source of the Creator Himself and the repository of infinite knowledge. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. Revered Swami Sarvadevananji and dear monks and friends. It's a great pleasure to be here back in Southern California. As Maharaj said in the introduction, I was here for many years. I think I was associated in one way or another, in one center or another of Southern California for about 30 years. So that's a long time. In fact, I was in San Diego longer than I've been any one place in my whole life. Though it was only 13 years, that's not very long, but it's the longest I've ever been in one particular place. So it's very much coming home when I come back to Southern California. So it's a delight to be here, delight to see you, and to speak this evening on, as Maharaj said, the work before us. The title is taken from one of Swami Vivekananda's lectures in India, a very important lecture about the work that was before him in India and the movement that he was starting, and before the nation. So it's not that I'm speaking about. I'm not speaking about the work before us in the terms that he gave but the work before us here. And by here, I don't mean just the Vedanta Society of Southern California, but I mean the work, and I don't even mean just in America, though I will speak some specifically about America, but I mean the work largely in the world at large, especially in the West, and then I will speak some about the work particularly in India. So the work before us. You all know, if you have studied Vivekananda at all, not all of you perhaps have, but those of you who have, know that he gave as the motto for the order, and not just for the order, for the tradition that the order represents. The order, the monastic order, is at the center of the tradition, but the tradition, of course, is larger. There are many organizations that follow our tradition, which are integrated with our tradition in one way or another. Either by heart or organizationally. And so the tradition is a very large movement. And so he gave as the motto for the movement, Atmano mokshartham jagadhitaya cha in Sanskrit, which means for one's own liberation and for the good of the world. So for one's own liberation, for one's own spiritual liberation, one's own enlightenment, in more Buddhist terms, and for the good of the world. Swami Vivekananda emphasized both of those. Both are extremely important, and that's why he put both of them in the motto of the order. Now, since Swamiji's time, people, some of our Swamis, have commented on that motto because that's what later generations do. They comment on the great statements of great souls like Vivekananda. So some I have heard say that Atmano mokshartham, for one's own liberation, jagadhitaya, for the good of the world, cha, and some will say equates to equals. And so both are equally important. But others will say, no. He put Atmano mokshartham first, jagadhitaya second. And so Atmano mokshartham is the most important, and jagadhitaya flows from that. So you can take your pick, but that is the motto that he has given for us. And so I could end here and say that the work before us is our own liberation and the good of the world. Bus, finished. So, and some of you might be happy that that would be the end, and now we can get on to other things. But I have to make my ticket here worth something, so I'm going to speak a little bit more. So, for one's own liberation, that again, for one's own spiritual enlightenment, and for the good of the world. And you see that Swamiji gave his life for these two ideals. And so again, in essence, that is the work before us. Everything that I have to say that follows this will follow from these two principles. And the two principles are joined together in the statement. It's not that he gave us two different things. Okay, we've got this department over here and we have that department over there. No, the two go together. Whether you think both of them are equally important, or whether you think that the first one comes first for a reason, those two are the essence of our work. That means that we have to work for our own spiritual evolution. That is a major part of the work before us, to work towards our own spiritual evolution, not to forget that, because that is central. That's central. That's what we're here for, and for the good of the world. Swami Vivekananda often said that one who works only for their own salvation will be far from liberation, because it emphasizes a contrast between me and the world, as an egotistical separation of me from the world. He said that the quickest way to your own enlightenment is to work for the enlightenment of others. He didn't say just working, but he said working for the enlightenment of others, that is the quickest way to enlightenment. And that's part of a general principle. I'm not going to develop this very far because it's not the subject, but it is a general principle. The quickest way to learn a subject is to try to teach others. Father Francis Clooney, whom some of you have heard of and some of you know, a Catholic priest who is a Jesuit priest who is also very close to the Ramakrishna tradition and has written books on Hinduism and our tradition. He once told me that he and his friends in academia, if one of them hears about a new book and asks another one, "Oh, have you read such and such a book?" Then the joking answer is, "Read it? I haven't even taught it yet." Meaning that first to teach it, then I might read it. So the quickest way to educate yourself is to help others learn. And so the quickest way, Swamiji said, to work for your own liberation is to help others towards liberation. Not just helping others, so that's good. Helping others is good in itself, but it's not enough. Helping others with the idea of helping to uplift them and lift them in the direction of liberation. That's the quickest way to get our own liberation. So that's the essence of the work. Swamiji also famously said, it's very often quoted, and most of you have certainly heard it or read it. Swamiji said in a letter to Sister Nivedita, "My ideal can indeed be put into a few words, and that is to preach unto mankind their divinity and how to make it manifest in every movement of life. To preach unto mankind their divinity and how to make it manifest in every movement of life." I mentioned this the other night when I spoke here. What I didn't mention then, and I will mention now, is that once I quoted this to a fellow Vedantist, somebody who had studied our tradition well, when I said, and to preach unto mankind their divinity and how to make it manifest in every movement of life, he said, "Oh, no, not movement of life, in every moment of life." And so I said, "No." He said, "In every movement of life." That's significant. In every moment of life, too, that would have been a good quote as well. But every movement of life, in every action, how to make that inner divinity, the inner perfection, which is our true nature, how to bring that out in everything that we do. And that's embedded in the prayer we say before meals here, Om Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir, etc. So his ideal was to preach unto humankind their divinity and how to make it manifest in every movement of life, and so that also is our work. And that, of course, is a parallel statement to for one's own liberation and for the good of the world. So again, we come to this dual movement, which is in essence, not in detail, but in essence, the work before us. Spiritual development and the uplift of the world. So Swami Vivekananda was the first great world teacher, the great world spiritual teacher, to take an interest in every aspect of human life and every aspect of human endeavor, every field of human knowledge and accomplishment. Other great world teachers, and very great world teachers, those who brought illumination to many people over hundreds of years and thousands of years. But they generally interested themselves in the spiritual well-being of the world. And their message was basically forget the world, realize God, and that was it. Swami Vivekananda also often said that. He's in some of his letters to, like the Hale sisters, he would say, don't touch the world with your little toe. So sometimes he would speak very strongly about strong renunciation of the world. But in general, he took an interest in all human endeavors and all fields of human activity and human excellence. He was not just interested in religion. He was interested in history. He was interested in society. He was interested in linguistics. He was interested in the sciences. He was interested in philosophy. He was interested in the great personages. He had a great interest and admiration for people like Napoleon. Yes, of course he realized that Napoleon was responsible for the death of thousands and thousands of people, his own and others. So it wasn't that he was interested in Napoleon because he thought he was a great killer of human beings, but because he saw a manifestation of greatness. Yes, at the military level, at the level of conquest, but he saw greatness even there in Genghis Khan, Napoleon, and other such people. He was able to see greatness everywhere, and he found value because he found an effort to manifest divinity at all different levels of human life. He was interested in economics and every other field of human endeavor. So he didn't limit himself to the religious and to the spiritual. And so again, my ideal is to preach unto mankind their divinity and how to make it manifest in every movement of life. And he saw that divinity manifested in every movement of life, even in those who themselves were not aware of it, like Napoleon, again, just for an example, but many others. Late in his life, he said, now more and more I see the greatness of the worm, who just goes about his daily duty, his lowly daily duty, and there he found greatness also. He said, in all of you I see the Christ. Which one of you is not bearing their little cross in this life? And so this ability to see divinity in everyone, the manifestation of divinity in everything. And this was not a departure from Ramakrishna's teaching. There were those in the early years during Vivekananda's lifetime and afterwards who believed that Swamiji had departed from Sri Ramakrishna. But the more you study the two of them, their life and their teachings comprehensively, the more you see that everything Swamiji said was a development of the ideas of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna said that wherever you see a spark of greatness, know that to be a spark of the Divine Mother's power. And so that is what Swamiji saw in people. Again, that expands on the idea of how to make divinity manifest in every movement of life. We have to develop the capacity to see it before we ourselves can manifest it and before we can help others to manifest it as well. So now coming to the Western world. Not because the Western world is more important, certainly not. But speaking to the Western world, because here we are introducing Vedanta, or Swami Vivekananda introduced it, and we continue to introduce it. And so the work in the West is naturally going to be somewhat different from the work in India, and it always has been. In India, teaching also is extremely important, and it's a major part of what we do there. But in the Western world, and not just in the Western world, in the world outside of India, the teaching takes a different form because we're introducing a tradition which is not the tradition of the native culture in the Americas, in Africa, in much of Asia, in Europe. And so there are the elements of our work which are important in the West, which are less important than India. Now, some that I mentioned now will be equally important in India, and some will not. starting with some that are equally important. One of the first tasks before us, which has been before us from the time of Vivekananda and which continues to be very important and which we can't forget, and that is the dissemination of ideas. The dissemination of ideas. I wouldn't be here had I not run across a book in Sweden when I was an exchange student living in Sweden, and I went into a bookstore and found a book on Vedanta published by the Hollywood Vedanta Society, the Vedanta Society of Southern California in Hollywood. It's no longer published. It was a book of essays taken from the old magazine when the magazine published by Hollywood Center was called Vedanta for the Western World. So this book was called Vedanta for the Western World, and it was a collection of essays from that magazine. It had some reminiscences of direct disciples. It had one or two talks of Swami Vivekananda. It had writings by Aldous Huxley, Gerald Hurd, and other such people. But it was a wonderful collection of articles from the Hollywood magazine, the Vedanta Society magazine, which was published. And a number of people found their way to Vedanta through that book. And so I stumbled upon it in a bookstore in Stockholm. It was the only book on Vedanta in the bookstore. It was a big bookstore, Sandberg's bookstore in Stockholm. One of the best, probably the best bookstore in Stockholm at that time. And that was the book they had on Vedanta, and it changed my life. As I read the book, I had a strange experience. No, not a spiritual. I didn't see lights and fireworks and deities appearing before me and so forth. But as I read each paragraph, I had the experience, these are my own ideas, but I never thought them before. I never saw them before. I never encountered them, but they're my own. I recognize them as my own ideas, but I don't know how they got to be my own. They're here, but somehow they're here on the page, and I never saw them before. So that changed the whole direction of my life because I found that book. So the dissemination of ideas is extremely important. I've heard people criticize our Vedanta movement, the Ramakrishna Vedanta movement, because, they're always just talking. They're just talking. They give lectures and they give classes and talk. Should just spend time sitting in meditation. What are you going to do just sitting in meditation? Yes, meditation is extremely important, and we teach that also. We emphasize that. But if you come to me and ask me about spiritual life, and I say, well, just go sit and meditate, that's not going to help anyone. You go and sit, close your eyes, and the mind just wanders all over the place. A great deal of spiritual life is learning to clarify my ideas. Why? Because the world that we perceive, all of this that we see, is a world of interpretation. All of this is nothing but Brahman. All of this is nothing but God. All of this is nothing but divinity. I don't see that. Why? Because I'm interpreting it to be like this. And so I have to change my ideas. I have to learn to see that everyone is a manifestation of the divine. Even physical matter is a manifestation of the divine. I have to change my relationship based on this new idea. And as I change my ideas, not just that, but the various ideas we have about the world, about who I am, who others are, what my relationship to the world and others is, as I change those ideas, think deeply about them, think and change my ideas based on higher truth that has been experienced by many people in their lives, then over the years, not immediately, but over a number of years, my very perception begins to change. My actions certainly begin to change before that, but in time, even my perception, how I see the world that I see, begins to change. People change before my very eyes. So the dissemination of ideas is extremely important. That we do through lectures, that we do through seminars, that we do through books and journals, videos, all of those and other forms that we may develop with time. All of those are extremely important. And so that is essential part of the work before us. We've been doing it. and we have to continue doing it. And we have to make a concerted effort, as many have done in the past, but we have to continue doing it, to make the ideas accessible to people. One of the dangers of a movement that begins to mature, as ours is doing now, 100 years is not much, is very little in or 125 years, 1.25 centuries is very little in the history of a religion. It's just a moment in the history of religion. But it's enough where the tradition begins to become comfortable with itself. And then there's the danger that we just begin speaking to ourselves. Oh, don't you love Ramakrishna? Yeah, I love Ramakrishna too. And Swamiji, he was so great. And don't you think he was great? Yeah, I think he was great. And that's all we do is talk to each other. And to those who already know the tradition, and we're quite comfortable. We have our little circle of devotees. We talk to them, and everything's hunky-dory. Ah, wonderful. We pat ourselves on the back and say how great we are. We're greater than other religions because we believe all religions are true, and so forth. And we're very happy with ourselves. And if we get enough money in the collection plate to keep eating and paying the bills, then we don't need to do anything else. No. We have to be able to communicate with society at large. We have to retain the ability to speak to the common mind and to the mind at different levels. And so the different ways in which we disseminate ideas, and I'll come back to this in a moment, ways of disseminating in different audiences we need to disseminate ideas to. But first of all, just the importance of disseminating through writing, through speaking, through classes, through videos, YouTube, or whatever video. YouTube is a means of the moment, and certainly that will change with time also as different means of communication are developed. So that is central. Another thing that's essential is training of individuals. People who come to us and want to lead a spiritual life. Training of individuals, that's very important. Teaching people about meditation, teaching people about other spiritual practices, teaching people about how to transform their lives. One of several ideas that captured me when I read that first book on Vedanta, it was a mind-blowing experience when I read that book, because it presented religion in such a different light from anything that I had ever heard before. I had learned religion. I grew up in a moderately religious family, not a highly devout family, but a moderately religious family. We went to church 2-3 times a week. But religion, as I had learned it, was something that you believe and you have faith in, and after you die, you find out whether you were right or not. And that was about it. But here was a religion which emphasized that religion is about transformation. That's what its purpose is the transformation of the person, the divinization, the realization of my inner divinity. That's what it is about. It's about realizing the truths of religion, realizing them in direct experience. And so not just the dissemination of ideas, though that is essential and that is central, but the helping others to find ways of transformation, teaching ways of transformation, helping to guide others. And of course that means everyone always wants to be a teacher, but that doesn't mean all of us becoming guides of souls, but it means in our own ways, finding for ourselves and sharing with others ways that work towards transformation. That is central as well. Training of individuals. I remember in 1975, when I had, the winter of 1975, I had gone to India to join the training center at Bellermat, the seminary for novices of the order. I went from Chicago to India, and Swami Rudrananda, whom I already knew, He was a great Swami who had been in Fiji for a number of years. And he was a great Swami. He'd been there since, at this time in 1975, he'd been there since the early 30s, I think, or the mid-30s, 1930s, he'd been in Fiji. When he went to Fiji, there was something like 25% literacy. And by this time in his life, it was like over 90% literacy in the islands, largely due to him. He had improved the lot of the sugarcane farmers by traveling around the world to sugarcane producer conferences and lobbying the sugarcane growers that they must improve the lot of the farmers who were growing the sugarcane, which was the source of these industrialists' wealth. And he fought for them. Insisting on the development. So he'd done all of this. He had developed schools across the Fiji Islands. He had worked for the farmers and done so many different things. So when I heard him speak at Bellarmut at the training center, and he said that we are not here to build buildings or institutions, that's not our work. One hurricane or cyclone can come and destroy our buildings, our hospitals, our schools and colleges. So then what is the use of it? What is the use of it? If just a cyclone can destroy everything that we've done. What our work is to make, and he used this gendered term, so I apologize for that, but that's the language of the time. He said it's to produce men. Our work is to produce men. That is to produce men and women. People of character, people of spiritual development and grand character, because he said that is what the test of our work is. If we produce great men and women, that endures. That endures. Buildings don't. The buildings are only there to house things, but that's not the greatness of our work. Those are just instruments, and instruments that are not that important. But it's human beings, the development of human beings, the development of great men and women, people of character who can carry forward the work. So that is extremely important as far as the work before us. And we should never forget that our greatest wealth, the greatest wealth in our centers is our human wealth, the people who come, the people who participate, the people who help, the people who serve, the people who help the running of the center and so forth. That is our greatest wealth. The buildings can disappear and we can still meet under trees, but if we are still there, but if all that's left is the buildings and the people are gone, then we have nothing. We have nothing, just something for archaeologists of the future to study and nothing more. And even then they won't know what it was all about. So it's the development of individual men and women that is essential to our work. So disseminating the ideas so that people know that the ideas are there, and those who are called to the ideas, and I don't mean by that some God calling you or whatever, but those who see in the ideas something that they want and who come, then helping them to develop their character. So all of our teaching should be geared towards that. The training of individuals. And then another aspect is connecting the ideas of Vedanta to the local culture in every country, all over the world. Connecting the ideas and interpreting the ideas in terms that the local culture can understand. That's extremely important. Whether it's in Africa, in North America, South America, Asian countries, European countries where I am now, we have to learn to speak to the local people. Again, not just to the devotees, not to the convinced, not preaching to the choir. We do that too. I'm speaking to you, and you are all people who have come here because you know about the society. And so that is important. Speaking to the choir is important. The choir also needs support. But we can't stop with the choir. We have to speak to the public mind. We have to be able to speak to the common person on the street. The common person on the street, we have to retain the ability to speak in their language and to reach them in their language. not in the sense of going around knocking on the door and asking if they have found their personal savior in Vedanta, but being able to speak to common people who come to us or that we come across. Being able to explain Vedanta in simple terms that ordinary people of the local culture can understand. That's extremely important. We go to different countries in the world and establish centers for the local culture, And so we have to be able to speak to the local culture. And to do that, we have to understand the local culture. We have to understand the people, their ways of thinking, what's important to them, what are their values, and even, yes, what are their weaknesses, because we can help with that by supplying something to strengthen them where they're weak, perhaps. The focus shouldn't be there, but that's also a part of the teaching. But that is extremely important to us, the ability to speak to the local people. That we should never lose sight of. Again, it's very easy to feel comfortable with the people who are already convinced and just speak to them. And that's good. They need to be supported as well. But we have to retain the connection to the common person. And we also, as I said, there are different circles or different levels, levels is not a good term. I don't mean it in a hierarchical sense, but different circles of people. For instance, we have to have some, not all can do it. Someone like me may not be good at it, but we have to be able to speak to academia. We have to be able to speak to those who are scholars. We have to be able to speak to those who are the thought leaders of a country, which is not just academia. There's academia, which is a world in itself. We have to be able to speak to them. And that's something that our movement has largely ignored for a long time, and that we have to do better at that, because they are forming the minds of new generations, the educated of new generations. And if we're not involved and not able to speak to them, then our message is lost on new generations. So we have to be able to interact with academia at the level of academia, but we also have to be able to speak to the thought leaders, which doesn't just mean academia. That means people in all different fields who are the thought leaders. No, one person can't do all of that, but some of us may be able to speak to one type of audience, another to another type of audience, and we have to give scope for the development of this ability in different people. Some people who have academic training or academic inclinations, someone who has education in economics or in other fields, or in technology, the ability, or in the sciences, the pure sciences, in mathematics. The ability to speak to the public mind in different fields of endeavor, and the ability to relate Vedanta to them. Swami Vivekananda he had such an encyclopedic mind that he could speak to the greatest scientists of his time. He could speak to the great leaders in the art world and other fields of endeavor, to the philosophers and others. And so we may not, most of us, maybe there certainly will be some who have that ability to speak to all types of minds, but most of us have some limitation. We can talk to certain types of people, and so we have to develop that and allow others to develop the ability to speak to others. That's, again, part of the dissemination of ideas, but we have to be in touch with the mind of the country that we're in. Whether that, like now I'm in France, or whether it's in America, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in, I go to Bulgaria, etc. We have to study the countries that we're in and learn about the people, their values and their culture. Swami Shraddhananda, whom a few of you knew when he was head of Sacramento, a very great Swami who passed away a number of years ago, he told me that when he was appointed to go from India to San Francisco. He had been the editor of the Udbodhan magazine, Bengali magazine, and he was told he must go to San Francisco to assist Swami Ashokananda. And of course, he was nervous about it because he didn't know anything about America except for what's common knowledge, and he didn't have experience speaking to foreigners and all of that. So he went, among other things that he did in preparation, he went to Benares, and there met Swami Atmarupananda, whom I had the blessing of meeting in 1971 in India, in Benares. He was still there. So he went to Benares, and when Swami Shraddhananda went, it was around 1953 or something like that. He went to Benares and met Swami Atmarupananda, who had spent a couple of years in Boston. And he asked him, Maharaj, you were in America. I've been appointed now to go and assist Swami Ashokananda. What should I do to prepare myself? He said, if you want to understand America, study Abraham Lincoln. If you want to understand America, study Abraham Lincoln. So he took that up, and he became an expert on Abraham Lincoln. I've seen in Sacramento, I don't know if it must still be there, but I've seen it long ago when he was still alive, a whole big library of books on Abraham Lincoln, which he had read, which he had studied. Every year he would give at least one talk on Abraham Lincoln. He would go to Springfield, Illinois, and other places, in Kentucky and other places, associated with the life of Abraham Lincoln, and he would look on it as a pilgrimage, going to these places. And he said that that advice of Swami Atmarupananda helped him immensely, because Abraham Lincoln expressed the best, that is, the ideals of America. The best of the ideals of America were there in Abraham Lincoln's teachings. And so like that, wherever we go, we have to learn the ideals of the people, their values, their ways of thinking and so forth, so that we can communicate, and so that we can speak to the ordinary mind. That was his way of doing it. This is very slowly responding. There, it responded. So, learning to speak to the common mind, and then learning to express the ideas of Vedanta through the local culture. Now, this doesn't mean that we have with us the richness of Indian culture, the richness of Sanskrit language, the richness of the literature, the richness of the scriptures, the richness of the music, the bhajans, and the rituals and all of that. So I'm not saying that that's not useful to us. No, all of that is part of our richness, and all of that informs what we do. But we also need to be able to communicate to the ordinary person, the person who is not enculturated with this richness, and we need to learn, and we can express the truths through the richness of Indian culture as well. But we also need to learn ways to express through the native culture, through the music. Here in America, the music, whether the more classical or the more contemporary or the folk or whatever, but expressing the ideas through the music, expressing the ideas through dance, expressing the ideas through literature, through novels, through plays, through cinema. We will know that Vedanta has gone deep into the culture when we begin to see the ideas filtering through the cultural forms that are native to America. That's the way we will know that, now we have really had an effect. Now we've had an effect, because the people themselves, the culture itself, is beginning to express these ideas. So learning to express these ideas through the local culture. Another area where we have been active, but we need to continue being active. So this is just support for what we've done, and emphasizing that we need to continue it, and that is interreligious dialogue. That's very important. It's always been an important part of our work here from the time of Vivekananda, and we need to continue that. To us, when we've been in this movement for a long time, it becomes obvious that we believe all religions are true. But when we begin to talk to people of other religions, we find that there's much more to that idea than we thought it was. that we thought there was. I had studied some other religions to some extent, Buddhism and Christianity in particular, in some depth years ago, and of course I had immersed myself in the Vedanta tradition and the teachings of Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. And so I thought that I was well ready for interreligious work, and I started entering into interreligious work. And suddenly I found that just telling people that, well, we believe all religions are true, that doesn't work. No, you have to be able to talk to the people in terms that they can understand. And we have to be able to say why we believe all religions are true, and be prepared for other people to push back because they don't accept that. And to be able to dialogue with people. To be able to say to a Buddhist that we think that there's not a conflict between our idea of Atman and your idea of shunyata, emptiness, and be ready for a pushback and a dialogue of equals. We don't go into interreligious dialogue to correct everybody's thinking. No, we find that through dialogue with others, we begin to understand the richness and the depth of other traditions and how it's the levels of contact, as well as the levels of similarity, as well as the levels of difference, and the respect that we have to give to the other traditions. So interreligious dialogue is itself very important. I mentioned academia, the common people, these different levels of speaking to people, the thought leaders of the world. Swami Atmarupananda, who founded this center and the work in Southern California in general, he and Swami, in their different ways, Swami Nikhilananda and Swami Akhilananda, Nikhilananda in New York and Akhilananda in Boston. The three of them, in their different ways and in their different fields, they influenced many thought leaders of their time. In the arts, in Swami Nikhilananda, people who were at the governmental level and the diplomatic level, and Swami Akhilananda, religious leaders and university presidents and so forth, Swami Prabhavananda, writers and thinkers and so forth. So that, again, that communicating with different audiences of people. Another field where we haven't done much, and that's okay because we're a new organization as far as the history of religions goes. We're just starting, really. But an area which in the future I'm sure we will develop much more in the West is education. In India, yes, that's been very much developed in India. We have many schools from primary school up through university and post-doctorate education. But in the West, there's a great need for Vedantic ideas penetrating education. That's something that our Swami Atmavidyananda has thought a great deal about. As he well knows, it's something that takes, in America and in the West in general, it takes great resources, human and monetary resources, to actually develop a school or something. But we can begin, as he's done and as some others have done, by the thinking about modalities of education, how to develop a Vedantic education, how to develop Swami Vivekananda's ideas of education in actual classroom situations with actual students. Swamiji always said that I give you the ideas, you work them out. And so he did. He gave these great general principles and wonderful principles about education. But those have to be worked out in detail. That's part of the work before us here, in Hollywood, in Southern California, in America, in the West, in all of those regions. They're working out educational ideas. Swamiji said that education is the manifestation of the perfection already within. He said that all knowledge comes from within. We think that we go to a teacher and the teacher pours knowledge into our empty heads. But no, the teacher just stimulates our awareness, and the ideas come from within. The understanding comes from within. It doesn't come from outside poured into the head. So how to develop these ideas, the modalities of education, classroom situations, classroom techniques. That's what we need. Service for the welfare of the world, for our own liberation and for the welfare of the world. Service was one of the things that Swami Vivekananda emphasized a great deal. And we have many service activities in India, but in time in the West also we can develop that. There's been a little bit in the West, we do a little bit here and there, but as time goes on, service will become a larger part of the work before us, because there's always service needed everywhere. Different countries need different things, but everywhere there are people who people that we can worship as God, people that we can help in one way or another, as worship, as service. There was an old, some of you may remember the old Sunday cartoon Pogo, the Pogo cartoon. I forget the name of the character in Pogo, but this character said that he felt that he was called to bring religion to the rich and famous. He said that they need love too. so,
human too.
What's that?
They're human too.
Yeah, they're human too. Yes, that's
rich and famous are human too.
Yeah. So there are all sorts of fields of service, and so a follower of Swami Vivekananda, that should become part of our way of seeing the world. How can I help? What can I do? How can I help? How can I serve? There was a wonderful Swami in India that I knew. He's passed away, and Swami Sarvadeva knew. Well, I don't know if you might have met him, and you also, Govinda Maharaj. He used to, whenever I would go to India, he was when I first knew him, he was working in the Mutt office. And he was senior to me by several years, but he would always ask, how can I serve? How can I serve? And it was just a spontaneous desire to serve. And now in Kamarpukur, there's another dear friend of mine, Atmarupananda, who's always like that also. Oh, how can I serve? What can I do? So developing a spirit of service, and in time that will develop into institutions of service. Not that the institution is what's important. That's the problem with organization and with institutions. They become important, and people begin just to exist in order to keep the institution going, and that's a great danger. The church becomes the value, and people exist. The people who come to the church are just there to give money to keep the church going. And no, that's not the purpose of a temple or a church or a Vedanta society or a service institution. It's to help people. It's to help people. The people are the value, not the institution, not the buildings. And but it will naturally develop into institutions, because institutions properly formulated and properly conceived are instruments to direct energies, to motivate, to generate, and to direct energies towards the service of others. That's all that they are, and that's how they should be kept, not as ends in themselves. But that will come. So education, service, dissemination of ideas, and developing institutions to support all of our different work, where again, the machine should not become the value. The machine exists just to serve the purpose. And as Swami Rudrananda said, the purpose of helping others. So let me, there's several other things I could say, but time is up, almost up, and so I'll use the remaining minutes just to say, I said that I would say something about America in particular. Swami Vivekananda has given a beautiful explanation of the connection between the highest Vedantic ideas and the existing American ideals, the highest American ideals, the ideals of the equality of all beings, the ideals of democracy, the ideals of freedom, all of these ideals which are at the heart of what America is. As I said, Swami Vivekananda took interest in all aspects of human life and human endeavor. And so he took interest in society as well. And one of his very important ideas on society is that each nation, each country, has an ideal at its center. And as long as that ideal is healthy, the country will remain healthy. If the ideal becomes hazy or if it becomes weakened, the country itself will become weak. And if the ideal is broken, the country itself will die. And so the ideal in America is freedom. It is democracy. It is the equal value of each person. And no matter how ragged our history is in that regard, and at different times and continually through the culture, but that is always the movement. That is always what motivates the country and motivates the best of the people within the country. The idea of moving towards greater equality, greater recognition of the value of all people, and giving freedom to all people. Swami Vivekananda said that there must be physical freedom, there must be social freedom, there must be intellectual freedom, and there must be spiritual freedom, freedom at all levels. So the freedom of Vedanta is a spiritual freedom, and that's the only true freedom, but the limited freedoms that we have in society, those are also important. Those are important. And so the recognizing what are the ideals of the country, and then teaching in accordance with that. If we do that, then the message will find an entrance into the hearts of others, because we're touching the life thread of the culture. And so that is extremely important. And that's, again, why Swami Ajayananda told Swami Shraddhananda, study Abraham Lincoln, because there you will find the best that is in America. In America, learning the ideals, the highest ideals of the country, and learning how to present Vedanta in a way, not that every talk in Vedanta has to talk only about that, no, but to realize that what I teach, that's the touchstone. If that is behind whatever it is that I'm teaching, if that is there, then it's going to resonate with others, and that we have to remember. So let me stop here and just say that the work before us is open-ended. Swami Vivekananda, one of the great things about Swami Vivekananda is that he didn't come and construct walls. Many of the great spiritual teachers of the world, even if that wasn't their purpose and they didn't do it themselves, their followers built walls of you're on that side and we're on this side. This is our tradition and that's your tradition. Swami Vivekananda didn't build walls. He didn't enclose things. He didn't encapsulate things. I've heard people say that Swami Vivekananda failed to present a coherent philosophy. No, he didn't fail to present a coherent philosophy. He deliberately did not present a coherent philosophy. To make a consistent philosophy, you can only do that by strict definitions which exclude, which say that this is it and that's not it. Swamiji always said he taught by the shotgun method, the buckshot method, that is, presenting all types of truths. Once at Ridgely Manor, he said something, and a woman in the audience said, "Oh, but Swamiji, that's I don't like that idea." And another woman that was sitting there with the family in Ridgely Manor said, "Oh, but that's what I like so much." And so, no, I'm sorry. The first woman said, "Oh, Swamiji, I don't like that idea." And Swamiji said, "Oh, then it's not for you." And then another woman said, "Oh, but Swamiji, that's where I find you so true." I said, "Oh, it was for you." And so truth is bigger than philosophy. Philosophy is an effort to explain truth to the rational mind, and it has a very important place. We talk about philosophy in Vedanta all of the time. But no philosophy is perfect, because the mind itself cannot conceive of the infinite truth in rational terms. Reason is important. It doesn't mean that if it can't explain in rational terms, that therefore whatever is irrational is more true. No. But it does mean that the intellect cannot contain the infinite truth. It can explain for other minds, but within limitations. And so Swami Vivekananda never built walls. He didn't put an end to things. He opened doors. He opened doors of possibility. And it's for us to walk through those doors of possibility, and that is the work before us. So. I didn't leave time for questions, I don't think. The full hour is gone. Okay, if you like, yes, I'll be glad to, if anyone has a question.
Any questions? Don't be shy.
Yes, sir.
How do you account for the popularity of Buddhism in the West? And what do you think the Vedanta movement can learn from Buddhism?
Yes, that's a very good question, and one I've thought a lot about. Not that I have the answers, but I have some thoughts, that's all I have, but it's something I've thought a lot about. Buddhism has been phenomenally successful in the West, in numbers more than we have, certainly. We've been here longer, and Buddhism came around the same time to the West, but for several decades, Vedanta was the growing thing, and it was that which influenced many thought leaders in America and writers and others. And then from the 50s, Buddhism began to sort of ascend. First was Zen, and before that was Theravada Buddhism, but then Zen really began to take off, and then Tibetan Buddhism began to take off in the 70s and later up to the present time. So there's several factors that I can see that where Buddhism excelled and why it was so successful in the West, Europe and America, both. One thing is, it taught a religion where you didn't need to believe in God or soul. There was no God talk and there was no soul talk. It was just a method. It was presented. And in Buddhism, there's a lot of philosophy. There's a lot of ritual. There's a lot of complexity to, like in other religions, to Buddhism. But as it was presented in the West, it was largely a method for becoming spiritual without the burden in the common mind of God and soul. People who had, through modern education and the sciences and so forth, lost belief in the mythologies of religions, the idea of a God up in heaven who's ruling over the earth and creating things out of nothing and so forth. Here was a religion where you could be spiritual, which provided a value to compassion, to love, and to the other higher pursuits without having to believe in God and the soul. So that was one thing. Another thing was that Buddhist teachers, many of them, not all of them, but many of them, enough so that it had momentum in the culture, presented Buddhism as psychology. Starting in the 19th century, late 19th century, psychology began to build momentum in the West. Before that, the sciences were enough. The awakening of the Western mind, which was very important. I don't denigrate that at all. That was very important to the awakening of the mind, the dissipating of religious superstitions and so forth, the religious control of the mind, or religion suppressed the inquiring mind. The sciences opened the mind. But by the late 19th century, people having studied the sciences and found the advances of technology, and many people in the West, not everyone, but many people in the West, their basic needs were satisfied. They had food, they had clothing. It was no longer a terrible struggle just to survive. And suddenly they found, I've got what I need, but I'm not happy. My mind hurts. My mind hurts. Other things are okay, but still I'm not happy. The mind hurts. And so people naturally turned to psychology. And Buddhism came and presented a spiritual psychology. Again, Buddhism has much more complicated philosophy than Vedanta does. Vedanta philosophy is very clean and simple comparatively. Buddhist philosophy is very complex, but it wasn't presented in the West as a philosophy. It was presented as a psychology. And it's interesting that many of the Western Buddhist teachers, those Westerners who took up Buddhism and eventually became teachers in their own right, they had degrees in psychology, many of them. And they taught Buddhism as a psychology for developing and for calming the mind and for resolving inner conflict. And so that satisfied a great need in the West, a felt need for psychology. The combining of religion with psychology without the burden of, burden from the perspective of many people, of God and soul. And of course, there was another element since the 1970s, and that was a personality like the Dalai Lama, who his story was, he's a great man. And I have great respect for him, genuinely great man, a man whose story was very captivating, and the tragedy of the Tibetan people in China and so forth. And that was something which captured the sympathies of many, many people. So all of these factors worked together. My own feeling is that that has been to our benefit, and I don't mean this in a selfish way. I like Buddhism. In fact, I taught in the training center at Bellarmine for several years. I taught the third-year students Mahayana Buddhist philosophy. But Vedanta is as a philosophical system, and excuse me for sounding narrow, but having studied both systems and having loved, in fact, for a long time, I had more sympathies with Buddhism sometimes than with Vedanta as far as outlook goes. But over time, I've come to see and think that I'm right, of course, that the Vedanta philosophy is far richer than the philosophy of Buddhism. Buddhism has certain inner contradictions, which have always been a problem in Buddhist circles. The negation of the self has always been a problem in Buddhism. Over and over again, you see in Buddhist history where somebody tried to find some way to develop the idea of the self, and then that was cut because it was contrary to what the Buddha taught, at least as Buddhists understood it. And so the Vedanta philosophy, Buddhism, one of its strengths is, and one of the reasons that it's popular also, is it begins with a existential fact. It doesn't begin with a crucified Savior, and I'm not criticizing Christianity, but that's where Christianity starts, a crucified Savior. Buddhism starts with the fact of suffering, It's there. We try to deny it, we try to overlook it, we try to dance around and say, oh, everything's rosy and wonderful, while we're crying inside. And so Buddhism says, no, stop, look, there's suffering. Vedanta starts with the fact also, but a much greater fact, and a more solid fact than suffering, because life is not just suffering. And of course, Buddha didn't mean that life is just suffering. He meant it's insufficient. Even happiness is insufficient. But Vedanta starts with a fact which is much more profound, and that is you are. As René Descartes discovered, I can doubt everything, but I can't doubt myself because I'm there in the midst of the doubt. I'm there in the waking state. I'm there in the dream state. I'm there in the deep sleep state. I'm there always. At the center of all of my experience, I am. And that I can't doubt. The two things that I know are I am and I know that I am. And that we can't, and that's why in Buddhism they kept trying to find a way to come back to the self, but they never could find their way back to it because apparently the Buddha had said there is no self. We have a different interpretation of what the Buddha meant, but that's the way the Buddhists took it. Except for some schools of Zen, especially Chan Buddhism, which was the original before it went to Japan, Chan Buddhism, where they more freely talk of the self and the Buddha nature within everyone. And so my feeling is that in time, as I said, the Buddhism in the West and its ascendancy has provided us time to continue developing until the culture is ready to and in need of the teachings which we have. But someone like Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna, they didn't come for just 100 years, and now 100 years are past and they'll disappear and their tradition will disappear and somebody else will come along. No, they came for long ages, and their teachings are just beginning. The Swami Vivekananda himself told Sister Nivedita that my ideas will go underground for 150 years. But then they will begin to flower and bring great changes in society. And so that's coming close. It's a matter of a couple of decades or so. Not that he was speaking mathematically in 150 years from today, on April 21st at 5 o'clock. But in general, in 150 years, a century and a half, my ideas will begin to sprout and become visible, and it will bring great changes in society. That's coming. And so I'm convinced that what goes before is preparation, and the seeds are underground maturing.
I'm curious if the gateway to Vedanta, the cultural gateway in America, is freedom and the sense of equality. What are the gateways in France?
A good question, a very good question. Of course, liberté, égalité, fraternité, liberty, equality, fraternity. But there, it's a different interpretation of all of those three concepts. So those three concepts are still held as the ideals of since the Revolution. And of course, in France, la raison, reason. The French are very proud of being rational and being reason being very important. And it's a country where mathematics has been extremely important. So I don't say that mathematics is the cultural ideal, but these are all elements of the culture which are somewhat different from America. The people are more philosophically educated. Not everybody. Many very, very simple people who are not very well educated and so forth. But the educated people are more philosophically aware than Americans generally are, and showing the importance of reason and the necessity to explain things and not teach by osmosis. That just assume that the people will absorb what I said because I said it. But giving reasons and explanations and so forth. And then another element, this is not something that's easy to quantify or to put in what I've just said. But there are three types of people that, in general, that one has to speak to in France. There are those who are very Catholic, and many of them are Vedantists. I don't mean numerically many, a majority certainly not, but a small minority. Those who come to our center, many of them will say, I'm Catholic, but I love Vedanta, and I practice Vedanta, and I was initiated, but I'm a Catholic. And so there's the Catholic audience. There are some Protestants. We have some of our members are Protestants, and Protestants in France are very different from American Protestants. They are still protesting. And then there are what are called the laïcs, is the same as our word, the lay people. But the meaning is very different. Laïc in France means those who are opposed to religion, who don't want anything to do with religion. And they come to us also. But those who are either scientific or philosophical, or just they grew up in families that spring from the Revolution, which was a rejection of everything religious. The American Revolution was not a revolution at all. It was just telling the British that we don't need you anymore and would rather not have you looking over our shoulder. But France was a real revolution where they tried to destroy everything old. They have cut off the heads of the ruling class and they kicked the churches out. They were destroying the churches. There are hardly any images left in religious images in France from the pre-revolution that haven't been damaged. Massive damage to religious iconography all over the country. And even Notre Dame de Paris, the cathedral, was about to be destroyed until Victor Hugo wrote his novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. That's what saved, the only thing that saved it. They were going to tear it down. So there's a strong element of anti-religion in France, but France produced many great saints over the centuries, many great, great saints. And so under the surface of all of this reason and rejection of religion, there's still a spiritual sensitivity. And so that can be touched. So that's sort of a rambling answer to your question. I'm sorry, but that's the best I can do.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Swami.
We're very grateful that you could make time to visit us and to share your thoughts. A very, very thoughtful and also very thought-provoking talk we've got tonight about the future of the work and what we have been paying attention to and that we need to keep paying attention and how things will be developing. And this beautiful idea of Swami Atmarupananda having open doors for us, just have to walk through.
Yes,
Thank you
yes.
for that beautiful image. So Swami Atmarupananda will be going tomorrow morning to speak in San Diego at 11 o'clock in San Diego, and on Sunday he'll be speaking in Trabuco at 11. And Monday morning he'll be back to Paris, back to Paris.
On my way, yeah. I'll get there the next day.
Yes. So, but he actually came to America invited by the San Francisco Center
Yeah.
for their Memorial Day retreat, and luckily he made some time for us as well. And we look forward to seeing you again before too long.
Yeah, thank you, Swamiji. Thank you. I always love to come back.
We are very happy that you have given so much profound thinking about our goal, how to move on. We are stagnant sometimes. We don't think much, but this is very thought-provoking ideas that work before us. And as you said, Swamiji's wish, which will come up after 150 years, you are hoping for that.
Yes.
We may not be there, but there will be the upsurge of the spirituality will happen. Thank you, Swami, and thank you all of you for coming. Welcome. And Sunday, Santatmananda will be speaking, who is coming from Gurgaon, near Delhi, that center. Om Shanti Shanti.
Shanti Shanti.